Hello, and welcome to another episode of Poetry FM 101. This is my favorite corner in the world, and now it can be yours too. I'm your host, Nitin George, and this is Poetry FM 101, your weekly dose of poetry. So get ready to have your heartstrings plucked by the sweet melody of words, dance to the rhythm of rhymes, and swim in the sweet symphony of sonnets. And so, let's dive into poetry and ensure that you have a poetic day ahead. So today, I have with me a very special guest, a poet. And you know the drill by now. I will not be introducing this poet in this episode, but I will be introducing the poet's poetry. So, without further ado, to my very special guest in the studio today, would you be kind enough to recite one of your poems for the audience?
Most definitely. There was once a girl who got bored of her job. Repetition and incompetence made her a blob. Slow people and dimwits made her cry. All she wanted was to die. Dumb policies and stupid subordinates. And to add to that, she had to coordinate. Targets that can never be reached, and a salary that made her screech. Help, help, she gave a cry. No one to hear except a fly. Maybe I can become a movie star, pretend to be a priest at the altar. I shall pray and predict the stocks and get screwed in the confession box. I want fame and money, want it in a jiffy, honey. Want to be loved and admired, be the one everybody desired. Sitting on a chair I write songs, when targets are the ones that I should long. Maybe this job is just a farce. The poet in me is about to barf.
that was something. And I resonated with the line where you said about sitting in office and longing to be loved. I think was it admired, yeah. And I think you've captured quite beautifully this longing need in a human being, wherever the situation they are, to be accepted, to feel that like they fit in, right?
I would say more so purposeful,
Purpose. Okay.
like their presence is purposeful and they're not dispensable.
Right. And is that coming from your own personal experience, or is that the observance of others?
Anybody who's worked for an organization would agree with me that we are all very dispensable. So
yes.
yes. And while everybody, an individual brings something to the table, somebody else can also do the same.
True.
So those kind of, philosophical questions used to kind of bother me when I was in the workplace. Questions about my identity. Who am I? If this is taken away from me, then what do I stand for?
Right. Yeah. And have you really found an answer, black and white?
Yes, with time and experience, I would say that I'm more in touch with who I am without my organization.
Right, you've discovered your authentic voice, your authentic
my true self.
Your true self.
Yeah, but it's a work in progress. It's not something that
Yeah, it's a lifetime journey.
Yes, so that self discovery is a constant process.
Amen. Absolutely. Yeah. Right. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Now, bringing the topic back to the realm of poetry. Do you remember the first time you recited a poem in front of an audience? Or did you ever recite a poem?
Of course, in school I did, like most of us. So I have done that. I have done it on a larger audience on stage also. So I would say a lot of nerves. And once you start reciting, you're always worried about what is the next line, if you're going to remember it.
Right.
So, but I think if you're well prepared, you can kind of go on auto mode and kind of do it. But fear, I would say, fear was my greatest emotion at that time.
Right. So when you did the recitals in school, was that because you really wanted to, or because you were asked to and you didn't really have a say in the matter?
I would say I was a good student of literature. So, I used to be selected for these. I wouldn't say I was particularly, and I had a good memory. I would say I could remember, things and facts. So I think just a little bit of talent and a little bit of choice and such things.
And a little bit of persuasion from the teachers. And after your school, like once you started working, once you found your own footing, and became independent in the so-called sense, did you continue reciting poetry at events where you
Not poetry, but I have spoken at public forums, but
right,
not particularly poetry.
not
Yeah.
particularly poetry? Okay, got it. Which then brings me to a very interesting question. Have you ever written a poem for someone? If so, what was the occasion? How did the person react to it?
Unfortunately, I haven't written a poem for
Oh
someone.
no,
So
no. Okay,
that's
yet,
never happened. Yes,
yet,
yet, yet,
yet. All
yet.
right.
Yeah.
Do you think you might end up writing a poem for someone at some point?
I don't know.
I don't
I
know.
can't say.
Fair enough. All right. So, you know, it's a hypothetical question, maybe, and more around your perspective on it. But what do you think is in store for the future of poetry?
I think poetry, as any form of literature, will always have its place in the future as it has in history. It'll always be in vogue. But we must also understand that there's a lot of poetry which is translated to English, and sometimes the nuance is lost in translation.
Right.
So it's very important that the essence of the poem is retained. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
it has to be promoted in its language of origin. So whatever that may be. So because that will have a wider reach,
True.
a
True.
bigger audience, it
Right.
will resonate more.
And
So
it stays true to the depth of its meaning and
yes,
essence
and
of
what the poet is trying to convey.
trying to convey. Right. 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 Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. But, also talking about the fact that today, with the penetration of social media and the internet, and poetry also being democratized to a larger audience and a wider audience, I mean, like I'd say back in the Middle Ages, or when the classic poets were out there, poetry was perhaps a thing of
A certain
a certain
class
class
or
of people,
section.
a
Yes.
section of people. It was maybe unattainable, or not something that that normal people could do, or create. And there was a certain element of
Elitism association.
elitism to
Yeah.
it, right? But today poetry has, it's been radically democratized. It's flown out to the masses, and a lot of emerging poets, a lot of newbies who are publishing their poetic works and all that. How do you see this, going forward, or what do you think about this democratization of poetry?
I think that's wonderful. I think especially the younger generation should have a right to kind of tweak it or mutate it according to their, their choices. And everybody has a right on poetry. It does not belong to anybody.
Right.
So, like you said, in history, it was segmented to a certain class of society, which was okay for that time, but it was an oppressive time.
Right.
So, which is it? And it is not so today. So, there is no reason why more people should not engage with it. There is no reason why people should not change it according to their,
Right.
their tastes and preferences.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is the way to go.
Right. I mean, we can all agree that poetry, just like any other concept, is an evolving thing. It evolves with the time. But then, speaking about that evolution, do you feel that the form of poetry, the structure of poetry, or the essence of poetry is being lost with all this, democratization that's happening?
I think the beauty of poetry is that it has no structure, right? So, and it's up to the poet what he or she wants to do with it.
Awesome.
So no, I do not think anything is lost. I think it's an invention. It's an artistic piece of work. So I think the more diversity there is in it, the more beautiful it becomes.
Right. So if all, something is gained, not lost.
Yes,
Awesome.
definitely.
Absolutely. Okay. And on this regard, I'm not sure if you face this, but there is a generalized idea that poets are romantics at heart. Are you a romantic at heart? And what does being a romantic mean for you?
See, I believe romance is a socio-cultural construct. It's man-made.
Okay.
So in its traditional definition, it is designed to be ephemeral, which means that without the participation of both parties or work on the relationship, it will perish.
Right.
Right? But it's also this fleeting nature that makes it so desirable.
So desirable,
Right?
right? Precious.
So romance is associated with pleasure, excitement, thrill,
yeah.
butterflies,
But the adrenaline rush.
yeah, such things. But if you ask me what it means to me, I think it would be peace, togetherness, pursuing common goals, just enjoying each other's quiet company, those sort of things. So while this might sound a little boring to a younger audience, I think if it's done correctly, it can be very rewarding,
Right.
and romantic in the true sense of the word. Right. So that's what I believe.
Wow, that is a very unique perspective indeed. And I mean, I'd say, it makes a lot of sense. So would you agree with the statement that all poets are romantics?
Because my definition of romance is different, I would have to disagree with this statement.
Awesome.
I think all poets are trying to convey something which is close to their heart, right? In a form that they can express it in. So I won't say it is restricted to romance.
Awesome. Okay. So I love your definition of romance. If I got it right, it is more along a cruise on a highway in a car
Yes,
rather than the
yes.
whole 4x4 sand dune, off-roading.
Yes,
That.
absolutely right.
Okay. Right. So, you know, we're doing the audio podcast today, and our video podcast will be going live in 2 days' time. What would you like to tell our listeners, our audience, to entice them to watch the video podcast?
I think here are two very interesting people talking on a subject which is very intriguing. So I don't see any reason why people should not watch it. So.
Okay. Well, there you have it. Two very interesting people. Although I would have, said one very interesting guest, but
And
thank
another
you.
very attractive guest.
Yes. So yes, you heard it from the poet herself. Two very interesting people and one attractive host talking about a very interesting and attractive topic. So definitely tune in 2 days time and catch my guest as I talk to her live face to face. Till then, take care. Have an awesome and wonderful day ahead.